I started as a theater director, and as a theater director, I began in my work to be most attracted or feel a great affinity toward directing musicals. Because when I was a kid, I loved musicals. So, I would go buy my big LPs of Broadway musicals, and I'd listen to them 100 million times. This past summer, I went to Stratford, and I saw Man of La Mancha. And I could sing along every note with that, because, of course, I had the big vinyl Man of La Mancha disc, that I listened to so many times. So, and it's interesting because I would listen to these things and I would imagine them on the stage. I would take these wacky opera plots and I would kind of try to find the rationale in them. And I would apply script analysis to them, the way that I was trained by Stella Adler and people of her ilk, who would really take apart these plays and sort of really get to the bottom of what that play was about. So I would do a ton of script work on opera libretti, which nobody was doing really at that time. And then it became the age of the opera director, and I got in just at the right moment. You meet two kinds of opera directors in your life. You meet the kind of opera directors, they're like sculptors to me, who see a rock and they go, some opera directors, I'm going to turn this rock into a bird. Or an opera director that's going to go, oh, there's a rock. I'm going to get my chisel and find out what's inside that rock. And I'm of the second kind. To me, Marriage of Figaro is a bit like, the knight in the labyrinth with the Minotaur. Figaro is like this behemoth of, it's so famous. So I'm working on my own Figaro and going, how am I going to do this? How am I going to set this? What era will I set this in? All that kind of conceptual stuff. And I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, oh my God, Mozart is telling me exactly how to do this piece. So just pay attention to what's on the page. Every character, every bit of motivation, every bit of movement in there is written into the score. And then I thought, well, let's test out the other great composers, Puccini, Verdi, Handel, Tchaikovsky. Right now I'm working on Rimsky-Korsakov. They all do it. It's all there. It's all there. Most of the stuff that gets produced is great. I do a lot of repertoire, and that repertoire lasts in the repertoire because it's worthy of repetition, so that the inspiration is there. And as I said, in new opera, in the dramaturgical process, if I'm listening to it and I don't know how to direct it, I send it back and ask for it to be rewritten. What was always interesting to me about the new operas that I directed was the fact that I felt that my job was way more important doing new opera than it ever was doing repertory. Because the audience and critics could not tell the difference between a property and a production in a piece they had never seen before. So if I don't deliver it at a high level, they think that the piece is bad. If I take a great piece and do a crappy production of it at a premiere, they can't tell. There you have a da capo aria that can be up to 9 minutes with 6 lines of text that are repeated. And if you don't kind of know how to work with subtext, i.e. what you're meaning in that moment, it just becomes deadly dull. My hypothesis is that the reason that Handel went out of fashion for so long was because people didn't do anything with the repeated text, and they would sit there and people would just become bored by it. When singers come in and they sing an aria for me, I really listen to how they work with repeated text, because it tells me if they have any craft or not. Richard Bradshaw. Well, Richard and I had a bit of a love-hate relationship. Richard, when he took over the COC, kind of mentored me and kind of promoted me. And we had I think I directed 9 productions for Richard in his tenure. And I was kind of the go-to guy for obscure during his regime. Anytime there was something kind of weird, I'd get the phone call, right? So I would do things like Giulio Cesare by Sartorio, or Don Giovanni by Gazzaniga. Richard was a difficult man. Richard was one of those great impresarios who would often make it about him, and you kind of had to go with him because he could move a mountain, but he could destroy the mountain. So you wanted to always be on Richard's good side, and you never knew when you were or weren't. And I would say that 80% of my time with Richard was positive. 20% was terrifying to me, I do credit him with really taking a chance on me and really believing in me. And he made a big difference in my life. If I wasn't an opera director, this is kind of a no-brainer for me. I would be a psychologist, a psychotherapist, a psychiatrist, because of my obsession with why people are the way they are, what makes people the way they are. Because I also, I do a lot of teaching, right? And I teach young singers how to act. And of course, Jean Gomeschi had to come into the room, And it's not into the room so that we can talk about sort of the implications of that, but I'm going, well, imagine playing the role of Jean Gomeschi. What makes you do that? What makes you choke a woman? What makes you hit somebody in the head without their permission to do such a thing, What makes someone behead someone? What makes somebody do these things? That's what interests me, so that when I'm working on any opera, I kind of go, why does Cavaradossi, what's his arc in that opera? What's the arc of the Duke in Rigoletto, as opposed to he's just the bad guy? Well, I don't think he is at all. He's a human being. How do we find the three dimensions of these characters? This I find totally fascinating, so that if opera didn't exist and I couldn't be doing this work, I'd go back to school and I'd become a psychotherapist. I think. Schmopera. Until we meet again.